In our last few reports, we have been frequently referring to unmanned aerial vehicles attacks in and around the Russian capital, Moscow. A great mood of panic prevails the Russian capital, Moscow, usually due to the attacks allegedly carried out by the Ukrainian army. According to local sources, Russian government officials are experiencing a much greater panic than Russian citizens, because as you know, elections are approaching in Russia. Especially the attacks on the Russian capital, Moscow, and the fact that the Ukrainian army is gaining the power to cross Russia's borders day by day with the land reconnaissance and missiles firing are causing Russian citizens to get angry against the government of the Russian Federation. Anger is growing against the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. But Putin's attempts to suppress this anger are failing. Unmanned aerial vehicles strikes, one of the reasons for the anger, cannot be stopped. Recently, a first happened and Novgorod north of Moscow was hit. So what's going on? Let's check out the latest developments together. Novgorod is a region located north of Moscow, the capital of Russia. In fact, this region is located about 650 kilometers from the Ukrainian borders. That is, it is many kilometers away from the front line where the main battles is taking place. It is known that there are many ammunition depots, hangars, military facilities, and military airports belonging to the Russian army in this city, which is considered relatively safe. So much so that it is reported that the vast majority of Russian soldiers who are responsible for protecting Russia's northern borders are equipped thanks to these facilities and warehouses located in the region. The Russian army has drastically changed its combat strategy in recent days. As you know, the Ukrainian army has achieved a great superiority over the Russian army in many areas of the front line in counterattack operations. One of the most important reasons for this superiority was the coordinated work of Ukrainian infantry units and Ukrainian artillery units. However, such a situation is not observed in Russian troops. Russian troops often act independently and disconnectedly from each other. This allows the Ukrainian army to establish an advantage over the Russian positions. But the Russian military is trying to take a measure in this regard. This measure is, as you can imagine, the Air Force. Fighter jets of the Russian Air Force are conducting attacks on Ukrainian in remote areas, trying to break the defensive and offensive potential of the Ukrainian army. Ukrainian air defense systems are mostly responding to these attacks. However, the air defense of the Ukrainian army does not connect within the borders of Ukraine. The Ukrainian Air Force begins the defense of its airspace from within the borders of Russia. We have witnessed that unmanned aerial vehicles attacks have been carried out in Moscow many times in the past month and days. These attacks were usually aimed at administration buildings and buildings where economic transactions were carried out. Although Russia blamed Ukraine for these attacks, Ukraine had maintained a policy of silence about these allegations. In recent days, Moscow had once again been shaken by unmanned aerial vehicles attacks. Moreover, these unmanned aerial vehicles attacks were carried out at a military airport at Novgorod, located north of Moscow. Russian Tu-22M3 strategic bombers carrying X-22 missiles were stationed at this airport. Remember these planes from the Russian attacks on the Ukrainian city of Mariupol. According to the claim, some of these planes were heavily damaged when unmanned aerial vehicles hit the airport, but Russian officials denied this claim. According to the claims of Russian officials, a small damage was caused to the military airport as a result of the drone attack. It is stated that the unmanned aerial vehicles in question is a helicopter-type unmanned aerial vehicle, which is among the information obtained from the Russian sources. It is also reported that a small-scale fire also occurred when the unmanned aerial vehicles hit the airport area, and this fire was brought under control by the Russian fire crew in a short time. If we talk about preparators of the attack, we can say that there was various allegations about this issue. Ukrainian official sources have not made statements that the attack were carried out by the Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles. However, many local sources claim that these attacks were carried out by Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles. There is a great panic in Russia due to the unmanned aerial vehicles attacks. As you may remember from our previous reports in recent days, the Russian capital Moscow is shaking due to the attacks carried out by unmanned aerial vehicles. The attacks of unmanned aerial vehicles, which are the state-of-the-art of technology, are not limited to Moscow either. And in the Black Sea, there is a storm of unmanned aerial vehicles. Recently, according to Russian sources, Russia's fleets located in the Black Sea were subjected to joint attacks organized by unmanned naval vehicles and unmanned aerial vehicles. It is reported that some ships in the Russian fleet suffered heavy damage during these attacks, but most of the unmanned aerial vehicles and unmanned naval vehicles that carried out the attacks were destroyed. Local Ukrainian sources, on the other hand, denied the statements of the damage by Russian sources. According to local Ukrainian sources, the Russian naval fleet suffered quite heavy damage during the recent attacks. As you can understand, the Russian Federation is grappling with the drone attacks not only in Moscow but also in the Black Sea. Moreover, this situation leads to emergence of quite different allegations in the Russian public opinion. According to the information we obtained from local sources in Russia, there is a very noticeable topic of discussion among the Russian people at the moment. Russian citizens at the moment believe that the Putin administration is deceiving Russian citizens by putting forward rhetoric about air defense systems. Another remarkable incident in Russia is related to the Kursk region located on the northern border of Ukraine. As you may recall, some soldiers of the Free Russian Legion and the Russian volunteer corps crossed the Russian borders and attacked Russian targets in Kursk, Berdyansk, and Belgrade. There has been a silence in these areas for a long time. However, this silence has been broken recently. The Kursk region of Russia was rocked by explosions. Roman Starovoyt, the governor of Russia's Kursk region, last claimed that the Ukrainian artillery targeted military facilities located in the Kursk region. According to Governor Starovoyt's statements, military facilities were heavily damaged during the attacks of Ukrainian artillery. Several Russian military personnel are also alleged to have been injured during the attacks in question. As the war drags on, Russia is facing bigger problems every day. However, the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, seems to insist on continuing this unjust war. In this case, we can talk about Putin's taking a big gamble. And what do you think? Do you think the drone attacks in Moscow were carried out by the Ukrainian army? Do you expect more drone attacks on Moscow? How do these attacks affect the war? What do you think about the attacks in Kursk? We care about your opinions. Please share them with us.